So for Traoré, a junior officer, Le Capitan, a captain, to actually organize to take over and defeat a fellow armyman who was his senior took a lot of organization. It didn't happen magically. It took a lot of organization, and it is the same organization that he then took into governing. See, so he really is a breath of fresh air, and it is not accidental that he has inspired an entire generation. He is still not a messiah. He's just a human like the rest of us, only that he's been able to truly live out his ideals and his principles.
Peace and blessings, everybody. I am your brother Orina, all the way from the motherland, all the way from Kenya, Nairobi, nation's capital. And today we have a special guest. I've been a fan of this man for a very long time. And today I'm really honored to have him on Sell Afrika to Africans. You've seen him on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, talking about African issues. He's a real Pan-Africanist. And today I'm really, like, you guys can even see I'm smiling. Like, you know, when you meet somebody who you really followed for a very long time, it's something special. So today, guys, please welcome the one and only DJ Bwakali. DJ.
Thank you very much, brother Orina. Thank you very much. It's a great joy for me to be here too, brother.
DJ, let me tell you, I'm a big fan.
Thank you so much.
Big fan. I just want, how are you? How are you today?
I'm doing great. And honestly, I'm really excited to be here because you and I have been planning this for a couple of months now. So I'm also very happy to be here. You know, when I also learned about your work and started watching, I was like, yeah. That's what Africa needs.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So I think DJ, before we start, I just want to let everybody know.
Yes.
How did you get into this Pan-African space?
Yes.
What inspired you to become a Pan-African?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great question. Surprisingly, I don't often get that. So actually, it also helps me to look back and just stress that journey, how it has been. Yeah, basically, in my early 20s there, when I remember a time when I decided that I want to write a book. And when I was researching for that book, it was called Sweet Victory. I never got to publish it, but I think I was 19 or 20. But I remember spending a lot of time working on that book. And the whole idea was I wanted the book to showcase how the African can succeed. Because at that time, I remember I had tried to travel to the US. I didn't get a visa. Then I had a very reflective time of trying to ask myself, why did I want to travel in the first place? Then when it became clear to me that just like millions and millions of other Africans, I was associating America with that famous American dream. And the fact that reaching there is almost like reaching to heaven on earth. And I remember in that reflection, me feeling like, wait a minute, why must it be that way? I think Africa has to be the place where people can also make it right here in Africa. But the reality on the ground was different. Because just like other young people at the time and even today, I was looking for economic opportunities. I was looking to make it, in life. And it appeared like America is a place where you can make it. But through that reflection, I began to look at Africa differently. I began to realize that it has to be possible for a generation of people in Africa to be the one that changes things in Africa. I realized that we cannot live in that perpetual state of expecting that one day, one time things will be better. But for now, if we're lucky to go to America or Europe, awesome, then we'll do it. Yeah. And I remember at the time, just like now, the way you see these presidents and these dignitaries, when they are sick, they travel outside for treatment. So I remember in my reflection, even that was there, that why is it that even something as basic and as critical as healthcare, you can only get really good quality healthcare outside Africa? Because these fellows have to travel outside Africa. So I just made that decision at the time that I'm going to play my part to ensure that the African dream becomes much more present and much more powerful in the African than that American dream. Because even as the name says, that's the American dream. So I was like, and I still hold on firmly to that belief, that this generation of Africans must be the one to now begin realizing the African dream. Dreaming that dream, but also realizing it. Then from that period, everything that I have done has built up on that. You see, after taking that decision, I then, within like 2 or 3 years, started working at the United Nations Environment Program. And I didn't know nobody there. It was just now that self-belief that it doesn't matter, man, whatever it is, I can do it right here in Africa. And I actually got a job at UNEP. To date, getting a job at the UN is a lot of people's dreams because they pay well and everything. Pay well. Yeah. So when I got that job, I was the Africa Regional Coordinator for a project known as the African Environment Outlook for Youth. And that really, really helped me to actualize and to flesh up and to coalesce the African dream, because I was able to travel a lot across Africa now because of my work. And I was able to build a very strong movement for young people. There's something called Africa Youth Initiative on Climate Change. I'm one of the founders of that. There was also Africa Youth Environment Network that we started, but that was more of a UNEP project. Yeah. So when I visited a lot of African countries, Orena, I was shocked to learn that our tears are the same, bro. Our pain is the same. Whether you're in Senegal, whether in Mauritius, our pain is the same. There are no jobs, but at the same time, there's amazing beauty in all these countries. So it helped me to really appreciate the fact that on the ground in Africa, there's so much beautiful stuff going on, only that the ugliness of corruption and unemployment makes it appear like there isn't much good going on in Africa. Yeah.
Wow. And we're going to talk about the UN moving some of its headquarters to Kenya in future. But DJ, you've done a lot of reporting. Huh?
Yes.
And you're very popular online. How did you start the online journey? How did you start? Like, what inspired you to start spreading messages of Pan-Africanism online?
Yeah. That's a really great question also, because, I always tell people, if you don't understand your roots, you can never harvest your fruits. It all starts with really understanding your roots and being rooted. So a question like that helps not just the viewers, but all of us to understand that you've got to retrace your steps so that can inform the journey that you're taking. Yeah. So for me, I have always believed in storytelling as something that I need to do at an individual level and later on at a continental level. I've always believed, the reason I even got into writing was because it helps me to then tell the stories, as a writer. So when, back in, I think 2018 or 2019, initially I had gotten into Facebook, like all older folks, older millennials. I had gotten into Facebook, but Facebook back then was more for friends and family. You just connect with people that you already know. You look at each other's birthdays and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to organize using Facebook, like activism and people doing things. But it was so hard because I was preaching to the choir, people who already knew me. So I couldn't reach like a wider audience. And then I sort of let it be. I was not active after that because I was not able to use it for what I wanted. But then when TikTok happened, and as you know, the algorithm of TikTok was really about reaching out to strangers, where anybody can start an account and you're not relying on people who know you. You just discover new territory, break new ground. But initially I was very hesitant. Yeah. I have, like, because we're keeping it real. Initially, TikTok was more of a dance platform. So I was like, someone like myself, like I chairs an organization. I was like, do I want to be associated with this dancing app? Because most of the people who were on TikTok at the time, in the early days of TikTok, was mainly for entertainment and dancing and stuff. But I remember challenging myself that as a storyteller, I've got to leverage all emerging platforms. So that's the reason I decided that, okay, I'm going to do TikTok. But even initially, I was not showing my face. I was like, I draw the line by not showing my face. So it's just my voice, but I'm not showing my face. But the more I did it, the more I realized that if I can use this for Pan-Africanism, like to reach a new audience, whatever the nature of that audience, then I'll just share whatever is in my heart. Because I was already doing it anyway in physical spaces. Wherever I go for meetings, whether it was those UN meetings or other civil society related meetings in Kenya or across Africa, I was already sharing that Pan-African message. Because I've been driven by this very, very strong belief that we, the African people, must be the ones, as I said earlier, to realize this African dream. So with UNEP, I, of course, did it through the environmental lens. But now with TikTok, I decided to take a broader perspective and not just focus on the environment, of sharing the things that I already believed strongly about people like Sankara. Because I have, for the longest time, believed in someone like Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, So I started sharing a bit of that on TikTok. And then I was surprised that it was resonating with folks. Then I just continued from there, to use this platform to preach the Pan-African gospel. And then now there's that evolution of not just pointing out what is wrong, but how do we correct it?
Yeah, solution.
Exactly. Because initially, and even to date, Orina, I find that even to date, there's a lot of focus on a very diagnostic approach, where people are very good in diagnosing the problems, as they should be. We've got to keep doing that. But we also have to raise our game a lot more at the prescriptive level. Now that there's neocolonialism, how do we tackle it? So even for me, there was that evolution. There's been that evolution of understanding that, yes, I'm going to keep pointing out how Africa is being completely exploited, but also, what do we do? Because we cannot be exploited forever.
Yeah.
So how do we get out of that? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's almost the same thing with me, because for me, I started with my history teacher inspiring me.
Yeah.
And then that's how I started. And then years later, I built my Instagram. Yeah. Posting clips of Malcolm X, of Dr. King, of Kwame Nkrumah, or Sajifo, like of Pan-Africans who I was studying. Yeah. And then I said, I have to start my channel now. I have to show my face, and I have to actually be the one to do the education.
Yes, exactly.
So it's and like the people who spread Pan-Africanism, like me, you, Lynn, PLO, here in Kenya, because Kenya is pretty much low. I don't know if you've seen it. The Pan-African level in Kenya, is still down. Exactly. Yeah. It's still down. Yeah. But it needs, I was in an interview the other day, and I was saying that the question every black person should ask themselves is, what is wrong with Africa? Number one. Number two, why are we down? Yeah. Why are Africans always at the bottom and all these other communities are flourishing? The answer to that question has to light up a fire in you. Yeah, exactly. Like, if it doesn't light up a fire in you, then something is definitely wrong.
Absolutely wrong, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So DJ, you've been reporting on a lot of stuff. Recently, you've been doing a lot of reporting on Tanzania. Yeah. Very sad.
thousands of people dead, all because of power, or because you want to remain in power.
Yeah.
And you know what, DJ, let me tell you something. I always say this. There's no reason why you should kill somebody because of power.
Absolutely.
Because you're not going to be there forever.
Absolutely. We're all mortal. Yeah.
Why are you killing people to remain in power?
Doesn't make sense.
What do you think about this whole Tanzania thing?
Yeah. Yeah, Tanzania, there are several layers. There are several layers there, but the first thing that we have to do when you're talking about Tanzania is the Northern Star at this stage. The Northern Star, the thousands of people who have died. And I like mentioning their names, you know, people like Samuel Mgimwa, a young 24-year-old university student who was also a gospel musician, you know, who, when 29th happened, you know, that election day, he decided later in the afternoon to go buy some food from a neighborhood kiosk, not even a supermarket or anything. Go buy some food so that he can stock up, because he was the firstborn in that family. So he was just doing a responsible thing that any firstborn or any parent would do, to stock up on food in case there's gonna be problems. So he goes to buy food, Samuel, 24 years old. And then as he's buying food, the police come and they shoot him dead. Now, what was really tragic about him, just like the others, they first of all shot him in the stomach. And the wound was so gaping that his intestines spilled out. And when the natural reflex of him bending to hold that place, now they shot him again in the buttocks. And I mention that graphic detail so that people can see the sheer cruelty and inhumanity, not of terrorists or some unknown assailants, but the state police itself. Now, once you understand who is the perpetrator here, who is the murderer, and understand that Samuel is not armed, he's a civilian. Now, what happened to Samuel is the classic textbook definition of crimes against humanity. Because crimes against humanity are when you attack innocent civilians at that state level. So you've got to ask the question, Orina, why would the police shoot dead Samuel, shoot dead the 20,000 plus of the others who have been killed in cold blood? You've got to understand, in the disciplined forces, you have a chain of command. The police do not just wake up and shoot on their own accord, because those are disciplined forces. They follow a chain of command. These orders came from somewhere higher than them. They came from somewhere. Now, when you're looking at that and you begin to understand that orders were given at the highest level to shoot and kill innocent and armed civilians, my prayer is that people can then look at that gravity. And anybody watching this must be able to understand that if you take only one thing from the Tanzania massacre, remember the name Samuel, because the problem sometimes, Orina, of data and statistics is that sometimes it becomes mind-boggling. Like when you're told that in El Fasher, Northern Darfur in Sudan, when you're told that the rapid support forces in a singular day killed 2,000 people because they look like you and I, we do not want a situation where people feel sympathy, but the gravity of the crime is so heinous, it's so big, that you cannot even relate with it beyond the initial shock. We don't want that at all. That's why we must put names and faces and stories to this data. We have to give it that human face. We have to personalize it. And my prayer is that when you understand that a young 24-year-old called Samuel, who was just a gospel singer, was shot in cold blood and killed, that whatever other disagreements we have, even those who think that foreigners are being paid, whatever other disagreements, I'd want to bring them back to Samuel. Mgimwa. That's not an invention. Anybody can Google online and you'll see his face. If you're in Tanzania, you can go to his university and you'll confirm he's a real human being who lived and was murdered. So there are several such stories. There's Tina, a 22-year-old truck driver who was shot on her way to the yard where the trucks are parked. Now, we have to humanize all the tragedies in Africa. We need something similar in Darfur.
Yes.
We need something similar in Congo. We need something similar in the Sahel. We have to stop looking at this as just blanket figures. We've got to understand that these are fellow Africans. These are someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's husband, someone's parent. These are real people like you and I. So when they're exposed to such heinous crimes, once you understand it at that personal level, that is why, my brother, I am doubling down on Tanzania, because if we get Tanzania right this time round, it means that there will be no Kenya following the footsteps of Tanzania. It means that we will look back at Congo and we will now have a collective approach of ensuring that peace can finally prevail in Congo. Because look at it this way, we are at a time in the Democratic Republic of Congo where the Qataris and the Americans are the ones on the forefront of seeking for peace in Congo, but for their own ulterior motives. So you and I have to step in. DJ and Orina and all other Africans must say that I am going to make Congo my problem. And I'm not going to stop at the place of saying that the problem in Congo is Kagame. Yes, there's the M23 stuff, and Rwanda must completely address this M23 business. We cannot absolve it at all.
True.
But what we are saying is that it is not enough anymore for you and I to just point out that that is a problem and then say that the imperialist Chinese and French and all these others are the problem. Because that's not news for you and I. For others, it is. And by all means, we have to keep educating others. But now you and I and others in our positions have a responsibility to ask the question, what role do we now play to bring peace in Congo? Because if we do that, and that's why I'm focusing on Tanzania, if we also do that for Congo and we do that for the Sahel, then we are going to have the African people finally taking charge, fully taking charge and realizing that, yes, we've been messed up here in Africa, but the responsibility now falls on us to change that story.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think about, Chadema being banned from contesting and Tundu Lissu being detained? All these things. If you're confident that you're going to win, then you shouldn't be afraid of your competitor. Just let the competitor compete. If you win, fine. If you lose, then go. But you don't have to, because I'd like to think that Tanzania is a democracy. Why don't you just let democracy work? What do you think about, about Tundu Lissu and Chadema being banned from contesting in the election?
Yeah, one of the favorite weapons for all despots, whether it's in Africa or outside Africa, but more so here in Africa, because that's where our focus is to minimize competition as much as possible, which is why sometimes they go as far as killing people, not even arresting, but killing. There are multiple cases in the history of Africa where Africans who could have taken on the president or who appeared promising were then taken out. There are two things I'd like to say about Chadema and Tundu Lissu. That number one, Paul Biya did the same thing in Cameroon. They also barred Issa, not even Issa, the main opposition candidate. He was also barred from running. The same thing happened in Cote d'Ivoire. Yeah, Alassane Ouattara, also barred the two leading candidates, including the former presidents Laurent Gbagbo, from running. So it was not isolated to Tanzania, and that does not excuse it. The fact that it's happened in other countries in the month of October and this year does not excuse the fact that it is completely unacceptable. However, Orina, I'd like to also bring in this second layer. A despot, a president who has gone to the lengths of barring their opponents from running, we can no longer waste energy trying to make them change, trying to tell them that this is not democratic, don't do this, because it's who they are. It's just who they are. What we have to do is to marshal our resources, marshal our energies, marshal every tool in our toolbox to ensure that such a regime gets out of power. That's where all our energies have to be focused. And I'm not even talking about coup d'etat in this scenario. If it's a tool in the toolbox of the electorate, and the army is usually part of, the armies are citizens, they're not foreigners from Mars. So if the electorate, if citizens in a country look at that as a tool they can use, then all power to them. But what I'm referring to in this scenario is massive national grassroots uprising that metamorphoses into a revolution. Now, here's the difference. The people of Africa have to understand that there's a world of a difference between uprising and revolution. Often we have uprising, but it never grows into revolution. Uprising is like what happened in 2024 here in Kenya, where there were the Gen Z protests. They even went into parliament. They forced an entire government, to those ministers to be sacked and everything. The argument can be made that, okay, they still came back through other channels. But the point is that there was an uprising that resulted in change. However, this is where the rubber meets the road. It's only a revolution that delivers systemic change. An uprising can at best deliver regime change. But Africa's problems go beyond regime change. For example, in Kenya, there was a time people thought that the moment Moi stops being president, Kenya will become, an amazing
country.
Completely, you see. And it was all about Moi. Even there's that song that Moi must go, everything is possible without Moi, that has been adapted for all subsequent regimes that people don't like. So you see, there was a regime change. Moi went, Kibaki came in, but did Kenya's problems end?
No.
They didn't. The argument can be made that if anything, now we started having mega state corruption because Anglo-leasing happened under Kibaki. The problem in Kenya is that the bar of good leadership is so low that Mwai Kibaki then appears like the greatest president on the face of the earth. But it's just because the bar is extremely low. Because if you isolate Anglo-leasing, you'll understand how Anglo-leasing became the parent of subsequent mega state corruptions in Kenya. You see, because Anglo-leasing showed the Kibaki regime and subsequent regimes that you can mix mega development with mega corruption. You see, so that any project that they want to do here, to date, any big project in Kenya and in Africa is always embraced by regimes because the bigger the money to fund the project, the bigger the money that will be pocketed. You see, and that was really, really normalized in that Kibaki regime during the Anglo-leasing. But it's because the people of Kenya were so fed up. If you've been in a bad relationship, I don't know that this show addresses relationships.
No. This is a political Pan-African show.
But I mentioned that because almost every human being has at some point been in a relationship that wasn't the best. Now, the worse the relationship, sometimes the more vulnerable the parties in that relationship are, because it means that whichever future partner will be marginally better than this toxic relationship, you'll jump into that.
Yeah.
But ordinarily, you shouldn't, because they may be marginally better, but if they still don't measure up to a healthy relationship, then you have no business doing that.
The bar is low.
Exactly. So similarly, we have to understand that Africa has reached a place where it is no longer just about regime change. It is about systemic change. So if I channel that to the case of Tanzania, now Chadema must look beyond Samia. Chadema has to look beyond Samia. They have to multitask at the same time that they're calling for regime change, because we are calling for a caretaker government to take over in Tanzania through the proper international legal channels, so that that caretaker government can then oversee free and fair elections. Now, somebody may say, but why didn't you call for the same, like in Kenya or other African countries, Uganda, where they didn't also have free and fair elections? It is because you didn't have thousands of people getting killed. This regime didn't just steal elections, they killed people. And those are crimes against humanity. So any regime, irrespective of where they are, as long as they have perpetrated crimes against humanity, they have no business being in government. So Chadema, we are articulating that, but hopefully Chadema, act as a lend on any other parties there, should really articulate that. But my point is that they should not stop at that. Because it's so easy to, yes, Samia Suluhu was gone. Thank God she's gone.
Then
justice has started to be, the people who died and their families have started receiving justice. But if people in Tanzania also do not address of what comes after Suluhu, what kind of constitutional dispensation do the people of Tanzania want? Number one, of course, they need a brand new constitution. That goes without saying. Because the current constitution, you cannot even challenge presidential election results. You know that.
Really?
And it's in the constitution.
You can't go petition like the way we did
here
in Kenya?
You can't.
I didn't know that.
You can't.
Oh.
You can't completely, you see. So, the constitution must change. They need a constitution 2.0 in Tanzania. And that's okay. Even if there was no bloodshed, countries reach a place where they just, things are so different, they need a new constitutional dispensation. But as they address that, look at Kenya with a new constitution. You see? So that's what I mean by systemic change. At that constitutional level, at the mindset level, there must be massive political education, massive civic education, so that if Tanzania understands that this is a rebirth moment for them, it's completely a rebirth moment.
A total new page.
Yeah. And that only happens, like, you and I will never know what it means to have labor pains.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one day, those who have had them can attempt to explain. And what we will understand is that, imagine if women, God bless them, reached a place and said, I no longer want to feel this pain. Let the baby just die. We would have gone extinct. Yeah. But they have to endure those pains because it's part of the birthing process. So similarly, my brother, when we are saying that a country needs rebirth, that this is Tanzania's rebirth moment, it's going to be painful, man. And things may get worse before they get better. It is not going to be an issue of sitting in a boardroom and then arguing over legalistic issues. Even more important is the people of Tanzania, the more than 60 million people of Tanzania, must be part of that rebirth process. They must be part of that rebirth process, and they must agree to disagree. They must look, the other day you may have seen that, I actually posed a question, what does Yugoslavia teach Tanzania? Yugoslavia broke up into 6 countries. There used to be a country called Yugoslavia, but sometimes in the, I believe, early 80s or mid 80s, this country broke up into 6 countries: Slovenia, Serbia, Macedonia, you know. All those 6 countries were originally part of one country called Yugoslavia. You see? So Tanzania must have a very difficult conversation, for example, that is it time to relook at the Zanzibar Tanganyika Union? Because before 1964, there was no Tanzania at all. Many people who are not Tanzanian don't know that. Before 1964, there was just Tanganyika, the mainland, and Zanzibar. And then Mwalimu Nyerere and Sheikh Abed Karume, the leader of Zanzibar, they, in their own wisdom, marshaled, you know, their respective citizenry to then form one union called Tanzania. But it's a very complicated arrangement because Zanzibar has its own president.
Okay.
And the current president of Zanzibar is Mwinyi, is the son of the first president, the second president of Tanzania. After Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, there was Ali Hassan Mwinyi. Now, the current president in Zanzibar is the son of that Mwinyi, and he has his own cabinet and everything. But Tanganyika, the former Tanganyika, now the mainland Tanzania, it's not like they have their own separate president. Do you see that potential confusion?
Yeah. So is the Zanzibar president under Samia?
Exactly.
Okay.
He's under Samia. But when they look at the new constitutional dispensation that they want or they need in the country, they really have to ask that hard question, because some people have been saying that some of the special forces who worked alongside the police to kill people in cold blood were mostly from Zanzibar. Of course, some of these things can never be verified unless there's proper judicial investigation that is not led by the current administration.
Of course.
Samia Suluhu herself is from Zanzibar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you see, there's that feeling of, number one, you're not even from Tanganyika mainland. And most of these thousands of people who have been killed, if not all, are from Tanganyika mainland because there was no shooting in Zanzibar, you know. So for now, those are undercurrents. But I kid you not, they will have to be addressed because blood has been shed. So they will have to look at the fact of, do we want a different form of union as the United Republic of Tanzania? Do we want to maintain the status quo? Or do we want to go the Yugoslavia way? You know, do we just want to let people go back to their respective pre-1964 entities?
Which way is better, according to you?
That's a question that would actually go back to the heart of what does unity in Africa mean? Yeah, because Mwalimu Julius Nyerere believed in incremental African unity, that eventually, let us first of all get our affairs together as respective African countries, then we can unite. But a guy I guess you look up to a lot, the first president of Ghana, believed in instant unity. Yeah. Him was not for this business of incremental unity. He wanted instant unity.
Okay.
But in those early years of the early 60s, there wasn't much support for instant unity, partly because some countries were still colonized, countries like Zimbabwe, but also because people like Nyerere felt that let us first of all have strong countries, and then now we can look at a united Africa. For me, why I refer to that in answer to your question is Tanganyika and Zanzibar, we have to answer the question, have they been stronger together or not? And personally, I think from a subjective level, without having that lived experience, I think that it has been better to have the United Republic of Tanzania. However, it is now clear that there were no safeguards that were put in place, to ensure that people of either entity do not feel like they are being shortchanged. You see, because currently the people of Tanganyika, many of them are feeling that they are being shortchanged. You see, so the Tanzania experiment will have to show us and will have to trigger that conversation of what kind of unity is needed in Africa. What kind of unity will solve Africa's current problems?
It's a microcosm
exactly
of how
exactly
we can unite as 54 African states.
Exactly. But if I say something quickly on that, because if there's anything that has keeps me up at night, it's actually that issue. And I am persuaded, my brother, that the secret lies in making these borders increasingly irrelevant. It is not about getting lost in the legalities and the political complications of how then do we elect that singular president. And one of the things we can do, because we're being very practical, is that Pan-African currency. It's about time we actualize that.
That's the number one thing we should do.
It's the number one. And in 1991, there was already in Abuja, the original Organization of African Unity, already passed. Actually, the Pan-African currency has already been operationalized. In Abuja in 1991, they passed that. A few years later, I think 1994, there was more than 3/4 of the countries in Africa ratified it. They ratified the need for a Pan-African currency. It's there. It's only that after 1994, after now the requisite number of countries ratified the Pan-African currency, now after that, the presidents who have been there have just not fully operationalized it. So that has just been lost completely.
But why though?
And the solution to that, and I've been calling for that, let us really amplify this. In the 2027 elections in Kenya and all other elections before then, or in 2027, we are agitating to have referendums on the people of Africa to vote and compel whoever wins presidency to actually begin operationalizing the Pan-African currency. Because to the extent that it is not subjected to the African people, the politicians can just play around with that. But if we are having elections and then we add to that a question as a referendum during that electoral process, so there's no extra money being spent. So imagine a situation where in September 2027, there's news reports all over Africa that the people of Kenya have voted overwhelmingly for the Pan-African currency. You see, that's the kind of momentum that now will force
other countries to do so.
And whoever then wins the Kenyan presidential election, it forces him or her to actually provide leadership on that. Because why I'm really particular on that is if we successfully have a Pan-African currency, if you can travel to Nigeria and use the same money, you don't have to change to no dollars and then change again from dollars to naira. Number one, we save a lot of money. But number two, that's the kind of unity I'm looking at in Africa. I'm not looking at the complicated aspects of
who will be president.
Who's going to be president. Because that will just never see the light of day. If we have a singular currency, if other countries then follow Kenya's example, and I believe Rwanda, there are a number of African countries that now are visa-free, They are largely visa-free, so that you can wake up tomorrow and if you want to go to Benin, you go to Benin. You don't have to look for a visa from the French embassy because it's really complicated.
It's crazy,
So imagine if it is one currency. Imagine if you can travel to any part of this continent without needing a visa. Imagine that you can sell anything in Africa without having to pay tax wherever that commodity passes. See, imagine that you can decide to go to Congo Brazzaville tomorrow and work. You don't even need a permit. You just maybe need something very basic, so that the people of Congo, the government of Congo can know that you're actually there. See, if these things I've said, if they're happening, we will not even argue about, do we want a united Africa with a singular Trump-like president? Because we will have rendered those borders irrelevant. Imagine also if you can hop into the train in Nairobi and 2 days later you're in Dakar, the farthest part of the west coast of Africa. You can hop into a bus in Kampala and 1 day later you're in Cape Town or in Cairo. You see? Now, if we become preoccupied with stuff like that, and I guarantee you, Rina, we do not even need World Bank or IMF to fund such a project. I've done the calculations, and the money that we lose through corruption every year is enough to build a Trans-African railway, a Trans-African highway. Now, if that infrastructure is in place, do you know it will even address the issue of conflict? Because if there's a high-speed train passing through the Democratic Republic of Congo on its way to Dakar, then the conflict in Congo becomes literally Africa's problem now. Because you don't want to hop into the train and then you can't pass through Congo.
So now you're forced to deal with it.
Exactly.
I think that's what African presidents don't want.
Exactly.
Maybe that's why they're scared of the open border. Because they don't want the responsibility of Kenya, or, for example, Kenya, helping Sudan, because Sudan is just north.
Exactly.
Or helping Congo. Congo is on the west.
Exactly.
I think African leaders are scared of that because they're like, that's your problem. You deal with it.
Yeah.
And that's a good approach. That's a good approach. The more we open, now you'll be forced to deal with it.
Exactly.
If you don't want refugees to come to your country, if you don't want, if you don't want, basically, I think what the fear is refugees. Deal with it so that there's peace.
Yeah.
The countries are back to normal.
Yeah.
And exactly. You know what? That's
And here in Nairobi, if you go to the second-hand market, Gikomba, you'll find that a massive percentage of the traders there are from Tanzania, specifically the Chaga community.
Oh.
Yeah. So for them, they're already living the Pan-African reality. We really have to move beyond theory to practice. Because the problem we have, even amongst a lot of fellow Pan-Africanists or fellow historians, is sometimes we get lost in the theory of it. And then for the governments, they get lost in the bureaucracy of it. But there are Africans who have taken matters into their own hands. These people, because of them on what they're doing in this second-hand market, a lot of Kenyans are able to go and buy that the second-hand produce. You see? So we have to operationalize that, and we have to be solution-oriented in that regard. And this is what I meant by saying that we do not have the luxury, you and I, of just looking at the diagnosis alone. That's why we're saying, in the case of Tanzania, that yes, thousands have been killed. We're humanizing that completely. We're making it personal.
Yeah.
And beyond that, we're saying that the practical solution is a caretaker government, because a government that has committed crimes against humanity cannot investigate itself. It's completely impossible, It's totally impossible. That cannot happen. So you and I must then, and anybody else who is focusing on Tanzania, must then be very practical and say that, can we have a caretaker government? This is a global precedent of what has happened before. What will it take for that to happen? And then Chadema, because you had asked me about Tundu Lissu and Chadema.
Yes.
Chadema must smell the coffee and realize that now they have a responsibility to provide leadership on all these things I'm saying. Because if they get lost only in the fact that our leader is in prison and they spend 90% of their energy on constantly reminding us on how evil this regime is, we know that, man. We already know that it's a very evil regime. We know he's in prison. So we are saying as they do that, as they shine a spotlight on the injustice of their leader being barred from the electoral process, they must also provide leadership on the way forward. Exactly what I'm saying. They must be the ones to, even as some of us, educate the masses, they, as Tanzanians in Tanzania, they must be able to also provide leadership for these people, for the amazing people of Tanzania. So that they are saying, guys, this is what it takes to have a caretaker government, legally speaking. You see? And then channeling a lot of energies on that, helping people of Tanzania to understand that we cannot normalize what happened. We can't sanitize it. We can't just allow the regime to buy time and then life goes on. Because the blood does not forget. My message to the people of Tanzania and the people of Africa is that blood does not forget. Once you spill it, you have to deal with it.
It will haunt you for the rest of your life.
You totally have to deal with it. So if they just bury this, then what will happen is that there will be a situation where, you know how a river never forgets its wherever it passes. That's why a lot of times when there's flooding, sadly people die, but a lot of times it's because due to corruption, houses were built where a river used to pass. You see? So the day the river remembers and goes back there, you're going to face the music. And for blood, it is worse. It may take 5 years, it may take 10 years, but this blood of these thousands of people that has been spilled, if we don't address their justice now, and I'm not even talking, from the aspect of ghosts and what have you, it is just the way it is that either the people of Tanzania and us standing with them deal with this issue now in a procedural and peaceful but decisive manner, or it will still have to happen because when Yugoslavia broke into those 6 countries, so many people died. So many people died because even then they were not able to deal with that like they should have properly. So we don't want that situation where 20 years from now or however long from now, there is a crazy scenario in that place. Because I have to remind you that 31 years ago, the people who have died in Congo had not died. It's because we in Africa were not able to deal with Congo decisively like we should have, that we then allowed different regional players and global players, beneficiaries of the bloodshed in Congo, to ensure that the bloodshed never ends because they're beneficiaries. So similarly, if we don't handle Tanzania decisively, properly, now, then what happened in Congo becomes a template of what will then happen in Tanzania. Yeah.
Wow. What are your final words? Because, but there's one thing that I was disgusted about the AU. You know how they say, and actually, Prof. PLO he said it on the show.
Yeah.
They always send congratulatory messages to Paul, even they sent it to Paul Biya, knowing that Paul Biya didn't win that election.
Yeah.
And to Samia also.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
And even Prof said in the show, whenever an election is controversial, don't move quick to say congratulations to President Soros. No.
Yeah.
Actually, you should be the one on the ground trying to see what's going on.
What's going on? Yeah.
What are you congratulating? You know very well that there's something wrong. You don't even need to be there.
Exactly.
To know that something is wrong with these elections.
Exactly.
Yeah. I feel like the AU is
What do you think? Because to me,
Yeah.
I think the AU is not helping us.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll put it bluntly. I'll just put it bluntly. The AU has outlived its usefulness. You know, the AU in its current formation, Orina, the African Union in its current formation is no longer helping Africa. It's just no longer helping Africa. So the AU needs to be disbanded and to be born afresh. But for that to happen, it will take a brave African country to voluntarily say that they are withdrawing their membership from AU. Because the AU, when there's a coup d'etat, like the case with the Sahel states, they suspend them. They have not expelled them, but they suspended them. But now we need a country to voluntarily say, a country like Botswana, actually I challenge Botswana, Doma Boko, or Namibia. Yeah.
Nandi.
Exactly. We need a country like that is peaceful, you know, that there has been no coup d'etat, so they are not in the bad books of the AU. We need them to say, unless ABCD happens, we are withdrawing our membership from the AU, because that will trigger a chain reaction that might then lead to the disbandment that I'm talking about. In the absence of that, we at least need referendum. If Duma Boko, you know, feels like it's too diplomatically complicated, then there needs to be a referendum in Botswana or in Kenya, so that you and I, the African people themselves, can vote and say, we no longer want to be in the AU unless ABCD happens. You see? So for now, the main tool that we have is we have to continue making it clear without sugarcoating that in its current formation, the AU is just not useful for the people of Africa completely. And I would pose the same challenge even to the Alliance of Sahel States, because I like that they're uniting, they have a joint passport, they are working towards a monetary union. I like that for them, it is one for all for one, you know. So if that can concentrically spread to the rest of Africa, great. But you and I know, we all know that it will be a cold day in hell before other African countries voluntarily accept to join AES.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So what then should happen? AES must continue providing extremely decisive leadership. Like, I would really be heartened and happy if AES as an entity actually speaks out extremely forcefully on the Tanzania scenario, on El Fasher, you know, extremely forcefully beyond, if there's an interview, then, you know,
you squeeze it in.
Yeah, you squeeze it in. I would want them to just come out and say that as AES, our policy, we do not recognize Samia Suluhu Hassan because of ABCD. Because after all, even then they were kicked out of AU. AU did not apply any diplomacy on them. They just kicked them out. So they have nothing to lose. Imagine if they say tomorrow that we do not recognize Samia Suluhu Hassan because of this and this. We completely castigate Mohamed Dagalo, Hamdan Dagalo Hemeti, leader of RSF. Yeah. We completely disassociate with him. We look at him as a reincarnation of the devil because he has overseen the killing of black people in a genocide.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So we need AES to also speak out extremely forcefully on that. And as that happens, we, the ordinary African people, must never forget that we are the ones with the power. And as long as our voice doesn't go silent, as long as we keep reaching out to each other like we are doing, we will still figure out what more needs to be done. We cannot have a defeatist mentality. And we're the ones to totally change Africa.
We can't give up. I'm sure you've heard what Trump said about Nigeria.
Yeah.
He wants to come guns blazing.
Yeah.
So that he can bring peace to Nigeria. If you think Trump cares about Africa, let alone Christians in Nigeria, let alone Muslims, just if you think Trump cares about black people in general, then you have another thing coming. This is a resource grab that is fixing to happen. I've spoken to a few Nigerians. some are in favor, some are not in favor. There was a guy who told me that's in Nigeria now that many people are actually in favor of Trump coming to bring peace in Nigeria because the Nigerian government isn't doing much to bring security to Nigeria. I totally disagree. Fine, the Nigerian, no. I don't disagree with Nigerians when they say that the government is not doing.
It's failing them.
Yeah, the government is failing.
Yeah.
That one I agree.
Yeah.
But Trump is not an option.
Yeah.
Because we all know when America goes to bring peace, they leave it. They leave it in a disarray.
Totally.
Look at Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Look at Libya. Look at Iraq. They said Saddam has weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
After the attack, after they killed Saddam, after the country is in shambles, then they said, you know what? We actually didn't find weapons of... Wait. So you killed all these people?
Yeah.
Then later on you tell us there's no weapons of mass destruction?
Yeah.
So America is not an option.
Yeah.
Because, to me, that's what they're fixing to do.
Yeah.
They're fixing to kill anything that will stand in their way between them and the resources of Nigeria.
Yeah.
That's just to me, I think that we should have Pan-African militarization.
Yeah.
One African army, one African air force, one African navy, one African marine. Yeah. And we just bring security and we deal with African problems with African solutions.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, totally. And, I always say, my brother, that the most destructive, the most lethal virus in Africa is not the coronavirus. It's not the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV/AIDS, acquired immune deficiency virus. It is not that. The worst, most lethal virus that we have to deal with to address what you're speaking about is actually the CRE virus. That's the corrupt ruling elite. The moment we wake up to that reality that it's about the corrupt ruling elite, who always enable the imperialists and the neo-colonialists, they are always enabled by the corrupt ruling elite. Now, in the case of Nigeria, I remember in the last elections, I went out on a limb and talked about Obi. Peter Obi was like the third force, if you will. And I try to talk about him from that perspective of Africa needs to now focus on the third forces in whichever country it is. But he lost. I think he even came in third. And I remember my very good Nigerian friend telling me bluntly, Obi will never win. I think he's Igbo. And, there was previously the issue of the civil war in Nigeria, the Biafra civil war. Yeah, so I understand that it's still a little bit tricky, from that perspective.
Yeah.
But what that then does is that it emboldens the corrupt ruling elite in Nigeria. It is not just about Tinubu, but it is about that clique. Because when you talk of the corrupt ruling elite, we're not talking about the single individual. In fact, in some cases, the president is just a figurehead. He's not even the one in control.
Of course.
Yeah, he's just a figurehead.
Yeah.
So, unless the people of Nigeria wake up to the fact that the next time there are elections in that country, if those elections are fairly free and fair, I know a lot of times elections are never 100% free and fair, but if they are fairly free and fair, then the people of Nigeria must look in the mirror and ask themselves, maybe it's time to truly replace this corrupt ruling elite. And you do so by giving a third force person a chance. I'm not even talking about Peter Obi in this case. Whichever third force.
That's not in the...
Yeah, that is not part of that clique, that ruling elite. That is the one that has to be given a chance. Because if we don't do that, I understand those who are frustrated that the Boko Haram, and other jihadists have made many parts in the north to be fairly inhabitable. I understand the despair, the helplessness that many Nigerians would feel and then think that, okay, we've tried everything internally and nothing is working. Maybe let's try out there. So it is incumbent on us to educate them like you just have, that even America is not going to come in because they want to bring in peace. They'll come in because they want to take over, in very surreptitious. They want indirect rule. Even during colonialism, the British and the French sometimes ruled through indirect rule. So you still have your local leader who has been the leader for millennia, but now they're answering to the British. So it's easy for the Americans to have such neocolonialism where now they're calling the shots in Nigeria, but through the elected president, through the elected governors. Now, some Nigerians may say that, but if that means we stop being killed, so be it. And I will not invalidate their concern. I will not invalidate their despair and the solution they have for that despair. But it's going to be my duty and your duty to show them how that better way looks like. So that we have to show them that this Pan-African army that will bring peace here, this is how it will progressively grow. Because they can throw back at you that, do you honestly think that all these African presidents who can barely agree on anything can actually agree on an army? Maybe they'll be afraid that that army can be used to overthrow me, such things. So it's work in progress. It's work in progress. Suffice it to say for now that the United States of America, Britain, France, China, even Russia, because another bone of contention that we have in Africa has to do with Russia, because there are people who believe that Russia is completely benevolent and we just should give them a blank check, and that is erroneous, because nobody should ever have a blank check. The moment you do that, you're giving up your sovereignty. So yes, the Russians, even if they're 100% benevolent and they completely just want to help Africa and stand by us, we cannot then do what some presidents do, where now Russian mercenaries or soldiers become the bodyguards of the president for the sake of security. If that's going to happen, Orina, for 1 month as you put your house in order, so be it. But it means the Russians, should they decide that they want to kill you, they'll easily do it, because they're the ones, in charge of your security. So sovereignty simply means that we as Africans are the ones in control of our affairs. Completely. So nobody should then be given that blank check, including Americans, in the name of security, because they will come in, and it is possible, my brother, that their mere presence in Nigeria, as they try to bring in security, will now attract even more jihadists. You see what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah. So people on the ground in Nigeria need to understand that when a country like Kenya was attacked in 1998,
the bomb blast.
Yeah, it was purely because Kenya was seen as being a friend of America. So Kenya died because of our geopolitical, pro-American, historical pro-American position that we've had for the longest time. So that made Kenya to be extremely unsafe. The young Gen Zs in Kenya, or the older Gen Alphas, all the Gen Alphas, may not know that there was a time in Kenya when you didn't have to be frisked when you're entering anywhere, That only came after the terrorists started attacking Kenya. And they started attacking Kenya because of our pro-American position, you see. So the Americans need to look at that. I mean, the Nigerians, they need to look at that and realize that they can easily become Sahel 2.0 if America is deemed as now being their protector. All those jihadists can now focus on Nigeria simply because they look at them as puppets of America. So America going to Nigeria is not going to bring peace to nobody.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And America has a bad history of bringing, of these peace missions
Yeah.
And they end up leaving the place worse than they found it.
Exactly.
So that's why I know that, like you said, the desperation is there. There's a lot of insecurity in the northern parts of Nigeria. I get it.
Yeah.
But we need to find other ways. To
We
me,
have to.
all these African presidents, sometimes I wonder, I think most of them should just go home.
Yeah.
Because like we don't have that brotherly love.
Yeah.
And sisterly love that we should have here in Africa. Because if Nigeria is having a jihadist problem, Congo having a rebel, Congo having a M23 rebel problem, Sudan having a rebel problem with RSF, why don't they say, you know what? No, we can't let this happen. Let's just come together, and Kenya, give us some of your men. Gabon, give us some of your men.
Exactly.
South Africa, give us some of your men. We organize into a joint African army. We start because these guys are so far gone.
Exactly.
There's no way you can reform Boko Haram people.
Yeah, you can't.
There's no way you can reform RSF
fight fire
people.
with fire.
Yeah. There's no way you can reform RSF people.
Yeah.
The only way to deal with them is to wipe them out.
Yeah.
And I agree. Let's wipe them out so that we can bring peace. But let's do it on our own.
Yeah.
All these armies here, then what's the use of us having armies if we can't even help each other?
Exactly.
So we are busy going to, I think Kenya, was it, I don't know if it's in the 90s, but I know it's during Moi's time. There was a mission that the Kenyan army went to Bosnia.
Yeah. Exactly.
Bosnia.
Yeah,
so why are we going all the way to Bosnia?
Yeah, and yet here.
And we can't even solve our problem here.
It's true. Exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But you think there's hope?
Yeah, actually, I can conclude by saying that I'm persuaded that this generation of Africans is the one to truly transform Africa. But we have to decolonize our minds completely. And the biggest component of decolonizing our minds is realizing that we are the ones we've been waiting for. We're completely the ones we've been waiting for. And now I'm challenging all people who have strong opinions on what should happen in their countries, what should happen in Africa, run for office or support somebody who's running for office. We no longer have the luxury of disassociating ourselves or divorcing ourselves from the political process, because the Western style democracy that is currently governing Africa only rewards players in that electoral process. So we cannot continue being on the sidelines. We just can't. We have to, you have to ask yourself, who would I want to be president of Kenya? However long their shot is, however it appears on the surface that this fellow can never win, the third forces in Africa are the ones that are going to transform Africa. And what I mean by the third forces is simply not the ruling regimes, not the alternative regimes, because many of them are just cut from the same cloth. They're just the other side of the coin.
Yeah, they're the same.
Yeah, just waiting for their turn to eat. But the third force are now the folks who are not part of that, but folks who are daring to say, okay, I think I'm going to run for president, or I'm going to run for whatever seat it is. Africans can no longer be spectators of the political process, because that is what empowers the corrupt ruling elite. But I am persuaded that there is more than hope. There's a path forward. And this path forward is because the young people of Africa have proved time and again from 2011, from that time of the Arab Spring. The youth of Africa have proved that they are a political force. They just have to organize this force now and move it from uprising to revolution. Revolution goes beyond regime change. Revolution goes to systemic change, where the entire society, the entire way of doing things in the society changes completely. That's what is needed now.
What do you think about Traoré and the AES? Because I think that he's on the right track. He has started well.
Yeah.
Thing about African leaders is we lack they lack consistency.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had African leaders who started well.
Yeah.
They started saying all these sweet things. Even Museveni,
Yeah.
he started saying all these good things. He even said when he was fresh into office that the problem with Africa is that leaders can't get out of power.
Mm.
They have a problem relinquishing power. So he has become the person who he despised 40 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
I pray that Traoré becomes, or the Chiani and Goita. I pray that they continue with the work that they're doing. I pray that they continue with the focus and the momentum of rebuilding their respective countries.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I am a huge fan of Traoré. As you may be knowing, I've done a whole series on the Traoré before he became president, because I wanted to humanize him also. I wanted people to see that he's no messiah.
Yeah.
He's just a guy who went to university in Burkina Faso like any other person. He studied geology. Then at the age of 26, he joined the army. Then he went for training in Morocco, He went for a peacekeeping mission in Mali in his mid-years in the army. So he was just like any other young person in Burkina Faso. But he also had a very strong drive, because people his haters sometimes like saying that, oh, he took over through a coup d'etat from someone who had taken over in a coup d'etat. But you need to understand that for him to do that took a lot of organization, because remember, this was not a civilian president. This was a man whom in the army was higher ranking than Traoré. So for Traoré, a junior officer, Le Capitan, a captain, to actually organize to take over and defeat a fellow army man who was his senior took a lot of organization. It didn't happen magically. It took a lot of organization, and it is the same organization that he then took into governing. See, so he really is a breath of fresh air, and it is not accidental that he has inspired an entire generation. Now, two things we have to do there to realize that he is still not a messiah. He's just a human like the rest of us, only that he's been able to truly live out his ideals and his principles. But once you realize he's not a messiah, you can then tell yourself, okay, if I want to run for a member of county assembly or a member of parliament, or whatever you call these political offices in your country, here in Africa, then you be the Traoré of that particular locality. Be the transformative figure of that particular locality. And over and above that, ask yourself, out of these potential 10 presidential candidates, including those who haven't announced but may announce, ask yourself, in whichever country you're in, ask yourself, who amongst them gives me more Traoré vibes? So that as you're seeking elective office at your locality or supporting somebody who is seeking it in your locality, you are also seeking to have somebody with Traoré vibes as the president of your country. See, then the second thing that has to happen is you rightfully mentioned that Museveni was also very transformative. In fact, Museveni was a Traoré of his time. He also he actually led a guerrilla movement, for several years. And when he took over, in Entebbe, on the steps of parliament, when he addressed people after they took over Kampala, he spoke so powerfully. He said, and he ensured in the first years of Museveni's presidency, it really was about the people. And his forces, NRM forces, were so disciplined, Orina, that there was no looting. Usually in Uganda, with all those coup d'etats, when a new regime took over, there was looting by the soldiers. But Museveni, they were so disciplined that people were just in awe at what he brought, the order that he brought into Uganda. But the problem, they had a disease back then that I see even today of then treating people like those as messiahs, people who are above reproach. You know, if you criticize him, you all of a sudden become an enemy. That's a very dangerous place to be, which is why I have been very explicit that I would want Traoré to speak out more on the Tanzania scenario because he believes in Pan-Africanism. So I'm not forcing onto him things he doesn't believe in. He likes saying that our struggle is for the whole of Africa. So now, imagine if he speaks out very forcefully and says that killing innocent people in Tanzania is wrong. And because of that, we do not recognize Samia Suluhu, you know.
That would be powerful.
Yeah, extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. So I know that there are people who may listen to what I've just said and now take offense on his behalf, you know, and say that, like, come up with a litany of excuses for him and treat such an observation as something that is imperialist, you see. And that's a very dangerous attitude because any human being, even you, I guarantee you, if every day when you walk out there, people are worshipping the ground that you walk on, I kid you not, after 1 month, not even 1 year, you'll start believing that you're actually a small god. Because it's human nature, you know. As long as you occupy the human body, you are susceptible to the delusions of grandeur, you know, to thinking that you are the Messiah, you know, as long as you occupy the human body. So the antidote to that is holding everybody accountable. Yeah. It's purely holding everyone accountable. So that even Traoré, as we continue acknowledging the inspiration that he is, but if the day comes when you find 1% that you disagree with, and then you point it out, nobody should say you're against him. That is what will keep humanizing him and making him a better person. Yeah.
So hold him accountable.
Exactly.
And actually, that's almost the same thing what Prof said 2 weeks ago when I interviewed him.
Great.
That's almost the same thing. Hold them accountable. Help them in their work.
Exactly.
Don't worship them.
Exactly.
Help them.
And for him, I've also explained in the past that those who are calling for him to hold elections today also missed the point because half of Burkina Faso cannot even vote, you know, they're displaced.
Oh, yeah, because the
jihadists.
The jihadists.
Exactly, and control.
Yeah.
So you're going to be disenfranchising like half of the country if you're demanding for elections now just to prove democratic credentials. No. Samia, and yet when Samia Suluhu supposedly wins through the same democratic process, now you don't even speak against that. We are also tired of such hypocrisy. Yeah.
The Guinea coup that happened, is it yesterday or just?
Yeah, yesterday, yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, President Embalo, that's his name, now former president, was amongst the 5 presidents who met Donald Trump in the White House.
Was it earlier this year?
Yeah, it was earlier this year. The 5 presidents. Like you see back then, I held the president of Senegal accountable, you know. I told him that you can't go asking for a golf course from Donald Trump. As if I told him even we Africans, just call me and tell me that please mobilize $1 million. As long as I have your blessing, honestly, I'm sure I can do that.
That was fine. This is the president of Senegal.
Yeah, Diomaye Faye. Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Yeah. Yeah. So he was amongst those 5 presidents, including President Embalo, now former president for Guinea-Bissau, who also said Trump deserves to win the Nobel Peace Prize because of peace in Congo. We know there's absolutely no peace in Congo. And then Embalo was even worse because he spoke for less than a minute. He was scared. The guy who spoke before him, the president of Mauritania, took like 10 minutes. So Trump's handlers then said, okay, people, please take a very short time. They said it in a stern voice, like a school principal lecturing these presidents of whole countries. So this guy was a bit scared. He spoke for less than a minute. And then he had the audacity of saying that From Guinea-Bissau. It is a great country, but it is not as great as America. He actually said it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of president he was. He also ensured that his main opponent wasn't on the ballot, just like Samia and Paul Pia.
Same thing.
You see? So there is no love lost. We are not crying any tears that he's been deposed. But we are adding this caution for Guinea-Bissau because sadly, Traoré, Assimi Goita, and Abdul Rahman Chani, those are exceptions. But most of the guys who take over through coup d'etats end up being just as bad as the civilian presidents. Look at Gabon, that guy who won after they took over in the coup d'etat, and then elections were held and now is democratically elected. But it's just a continuation of the Bongo, of the Omar Bongo, Ali Bongo years. So we do not want the same thing to happen in Guinea-Bissau, because a tyrant in a uniform is still a tyrant. A tyrant in a suit is still a tyrant. So for Guinea-Bissau, the people of Guinea-Bissau must be really, really vigilant. And those of us fellow Africans who also make Guinea-Bissau a business, we must remain vigilant. And we must make it clear to the new leadership in Guinea-Bissau, the military leadership, and the military leadership in Madagascar also, that we don't care about your uniform, we care about your leadership. So that this guy cannot think that just because he took over in a coup d'etat and we are happy with what is happening in Burkina Faso, that he can continue taking the people of Guinea-Bissau for a ride. But in a nutshell, we are not crying over the departure, the dethronement of President Embalo, because he's been a disastrous president. But now we must ensure that whoever replaces him truly serves the people of Guinea-Bissau.
Wow. And it's funny you said that, because the thing about coups, I always say it can go very, very right or extremely left. Like, for example, it can go very right, like with the Sahel, with Traoré, Chiani, and Goita. Did Sankara enter into power through a coup?
So
you see, a coup can be super, like, it can go super left or super right.
Exactly.
Right being Sankara, Traoré, Chiani, Goita. Left being Sudan.
Exactly.
You see, so it's just a matter of the quality of leadership that's in the military.
And it boils back to the people that they must not abdicate their sovereign power by just allowing whoever's taken over to do whatever they want to do.
Wow.
Cool.
We are guys. I told you DJ will come and bring the knowledge. DJ, as we are finishing, what's the final word because there's a lot of things that are going on in Africa. But even though there are a lot of things, you can see that the youth is kind of waking up. Thanks to shows like Sell Afrika to Africans. Lean, and various, even Alpha House, even in yours, and your channel. I always say mainstream media cannot say or do what we do. Because they are under the government, and the government is under neocolonialism. So there are lines you shouldn't cross. The good thing about us is we don't have these communication things, like we don't have a regulatory board to tell us, no, don't say this. We can say whatever, and we can show whatever we want. And I'd like to urge everybody who has a platform, whether you're doing lifestyle, whether you're doing vlogs, or whether, I don't care the niche of your content, but use your platform once in a while, even if your show is not political, use your platform to spread Pan-Africanism. And use your platform to better your own people. You can't just, do what you do. And, cause sometimes I see this African channel. I'm like, you guys, are we living in the same Africa? Cause I get the niche that you're trying to serve. But once in a while, at least show people, hey, you know what? I'm an African and I live here and there are problems here.
Exactly.
You see. So DJ, if you can look at this camera. What is the last word you'd like to give to Africans?
Great. I'd like to say 3 major things. The first thing is that we need many more arenas. We need many more Selling Africa to Africans, the name of Arena's channel. Why I say that is you've got to look at it as beyond content creation. This is not just content creation. It goes a lot deeper than that. This is about owning the African narrative. This is about facing the bull by the horns. It's about ensuring that the story of Africa is told in a transformative manner. The truth, Africa's truth that will set the African people free, is only told when people speak out like my brother Orena is doing. So my first message is that we need many more Africans to speak Africans' truth. We need many more Africans to own the narrative of Africa. Because the more we do that, the more we're going to be in control, not just of our destination, but the journey that gets us to that destination. Then the second thing that I have to say is this. Africa has so many minerals. Africa is the wealthiest continent. Africa is the wealthiest continent in this world regarding minerals. But these minerals are not helping Africans. A time has come for things to be done differently. We must, number one, nationalize our mineral resources. But we must do so professionally, because a lot of times when presidents nationalize mineral resources, when presidents nationalize mining, they usually allow that to fall into the hands of their cronies. Cronism usually takes over. Professionalism goes out of the window. So we must be very, very professional in the way that we nationalize our mineral resources. But the third thing we must do is where we must give it a lot of thought. This has to do with putting these minerals in the hands of Africans. What do I mean by that? Using cooperatives, it is possible for African people themselves to become shareholders in the national mining companies that are mining these minerals. I'm going to repeat that. You see, the usual mineral companies are run through the private shareholders approach, where company Y has XYZ shareholders. And these shareholders are the primary beneficiaries of the profits that are accrued from this mining. What we are saying is that we now need to replace these private, national or foreign shareholders with the people themselves, more so the adjacent communities, through cooperatives. You may say that shareholders bring in money. Will these people bring in money? Yes, they will. Look at what has happened in Ethiopia with the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. It was built exclusively by the people of Ethiopia. Many have reached out to me. They used to send $100, tens of dollars, or even less than that. But the people of Ethiopia themselves actually funded the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. All we need is an approach like that one, or an approach like the Patriot Support Fund that is in Burkina Faso, that allows the Burkinabe people themselves to contribute to their security. So we just need to be innovative and open up these structures, these channels, so that the African people themselves can buy shares in cooperatives that own these mines. And why I'm belaboring that point is because we can no longer leave it solely in the hands of governments. Because whatever money they paid, even in fair scenarios where they get licensing fees, it often doesn't help the local people. So we need a complete paradigm shift in the way our mines are operated, but most in the way that they are owned, the ownership of our mines. Then the final thing that I'd like to say is this: it is time for Africa to unite. And how we do that is by rendering these colonial borders to to be increasingly useless. Like we already discussed in the show, by having that single currency, working towards every African should be able to travel to any country in Africa without requiring a visa. Every African good should be able to travel to any market across Africa without taxation. This is extremely, extremely critical. And finally, again, we are very categorical that there must be peace in Tanzania, there must be peace in Congo, there must be peace in Sahel, there must be peace in Sudan, there must be peace across Africa. And how we achieve that is by ensuring that the regimes that perpetuate the conflicts are removed so that transformative leaders can be able to ensure that this peace prevails. In the case of Tanzania, there must be a caretaker government. We cannot have the current regime investigating itself. They are guilty of crimes against humanity. The same thing must apply in Congo. I know that Tshisekedi is democratically elected, seemingly so or supposedly so, but Congo must be able to ensure the security of the Congolese people. And any president who cannot be able to do that has no business remaining president. I know there are external forces that completely weaken any national government in Congo. But when you become president, you must be able to know that you've signed up to ensure that you keep your people safe. So this is a very strong call going from us to every African watching this, that we are the generation that is going to transform Africa. We must rise to the occasion.
Thank you so much, DJ. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I hope this is the first of many.
Oh, yes.
This is the first
it's the
of
beginning.
Many. It's the beginning.
Yes. It's just the beginning.
By the way, where can people find you?
Yeah.
In all social media platforms.
Yeah. DJ Bwakali, just my name's DJ Bwakali, on YouTube, on Instagram, and on TikTok.
Guys.
Plus my website, bwakali.com. If you want to go deeper, like really deep on everything that I ever talk about, I have my writings there.
Oh, really?
And every day there are new writings.
Oh,
that's
so
bwakali.com.
Oh, it's a blog.
Yeah.
Bwakali.com.
Yes.
I'll put the links on the description.
Exactly.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. There's nothing else to be said. The man has already said everything. So thank you for watching. Thank you. Peace.